We're just days away from the release of The Batman. Actually, whenever this video posts, I will have already seen The Batman. And leading up to the release, I'm reviewing each of the Batman movies I hadn't previously properly reviewed on my channel. And one of those movies is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts of Batman Mask of the Phantasm and give a little point of reference of your experience with the film. Did you see it when it originally came out, or is this one you're kind of new to watching it? Maybe you watched it for the very first time just because the Batman is coming out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it down below in the comment section, and this is a spoiler review, so feel free to spoil away down below in the comment section. Now, Batman Mask of the Phantasm is a theatrically released adaptation of Batman the Animated Series. From my point of view, Batman the Animated Series is the greatest animated series of all time. That's my personal opinion and my personal preference on the matter. And some of that is the simple fact of the matter that I was the perfect age when Batman the Animated Series came out. I was the target audience for this show and watched it from day one. And I saw Batman Mask of the Phantasm in the theater opening day when it came out. But even beyond that, it was a really special show where they were able to do things that it's confusing. It's kind of shocking what they were able to do with the show that was intended for children. Whether that's having an actual score for the episodes with actual instruments, not just computerized stuff, not synthesized stuff, but actual orchestrated music. Borrowing and adapting Danny Elfman's music at a top caliber level. They were allowed to do that. Or making the characters' designs being influenced back by the works of Max Fleischer from the 1940s and his Superman cartoons. Or the fact that they used black paper for a lot of their backgrounds to just give it this dark feel. All of it has a timeless vibe to it. All of it is done with a greater sense of maturity than you would expect for something on Fox Kids aiming at children. And they were given kind of free reign to tell these mature stories about Batman. And therefore, here we are 30 years later, and Batman the Animated Series and the different renditions that kind of followed after it, whether the Batman and Robin Adventures, Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League, Static Shock, they're beloved by the fans because it was created by people that loved the material, did a faithful adaptation of it, that it had its own flavor and its own spin, but it was true to the source material, and the different people funding them let them do it right and funded them to do it right. So Batman the Animated Series, one of my favorite animated shows of all time, and this is the theatrical version of it. As I mentioned before, I did see it in the theater opening weekend when it first came out. And when it comes to this movie, originally they set out to make this as a direct-to-video animated extension of the TV show, and just as they looked at the script, as they got to work on it, they went, this is actually pretty good. This turned out much better than we were expecting and has more to offer. And so pretty late into the production, they decided, let's make this a theatrical film. And that's kind of what happened, is that they took what was intended to be a direct-to-video film and made it theatrical. And so still, relative to other animated films of the time, it was pretty low budget. Certainly had a bigger budget than an episode of the TV show, but was low budget compared to other big franchise type animated films of the time. And as I said earlier, I was one of the people that went to go see it opening weekend. There wasn't a lot of us because it wasn't a movie that ended up generating a ton of money at the time, but it's a movie who has a great reputation amongst the fans and amongst the people who have seen it. But does it hold up? That's what we're talking about today, and let's get started with the good. And to me, I think that this is a great Batman story, and one of the things that makes it stand out is that the main villain, the Phantasm, is an invented character. It's a populated world. It's a populated Gotham where Joker is there and all the familiar characters exist, but But the actual main antagonist, the title character, is someone that they came up with, a new Batman villain to flesh out the mythology. But more importantly, they had a story they wanted to tell about Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne's journey that ties into his time as Batman. And to do that, they didn't want to like hijack an existing character and morph them into something new just to tell their story. They're like, no, Batman can have new villains. You don't have to, we're not tied to everyone that came out and was invented in the 50s and 60s. So who can we come up with now that fits the story that we want to tell? And in doing so, they're able to tell one of the most compelling Bruce Wayne stories that we've ever gotten, because it dives into that psychology of what's driving him, the loss of his parents, the vow that he made, but it still treats him as a human that's tempted. Through the story and through the flashbacks in it, you have a Bruce Wayne that's preparing to be Batman, which, as someone that loves stories of beginning, loves origin stories, that stuff's always a lot of fun to see Batman become Batman. But you see a Bruce Wayne who's tempted to not continue down that path because he's human. And through what we see through this new character, we learn exactly what changed, like what solidified him on this path that he was on to become Batman and not settle into a more traditional life. It just makes him a layered character that has conflicting values, that interacts with people, and they change him and transform him. And through this character, we get that. And one of my big criticisms of the two Tim Burton Batman movies is that they kind of treat Bruce Wayne as a total afterthought. They give elaborate backstories to all of their villains, give a lot of screen time to all of their villains, but Batman's kind of this character, and Bruce Wayne in particular, just kind of these characters viewing and reacting to what everyone else does. And Mask of the Phantasm puts Bruce Wayne front and center, where you understand him. He grows, he changes, he transforms, he discovers things, he's challenged. It is an actual Batman story. It's an actual Bruce Wayne story. But we also have a villain who's given their own compelling motivation, their own ways in which they're tempted. The person kind of plays as this alternate, darker version of Batman, of someone that's driven by past trauma and respond in their own way to it. And they're also tempted to give up their own quest that they're on for vengeance in their own ways. And so it has all the Batman stuff that you want. You have the Batman action. You even have Joker showing up and tying into some of these origin stories, and you get little glimpses of him without doing too much, without saying too much. You get just a little bit of him without him needing to be front and center. But then you also get this whodunit of what's exactly who is the Phantasm, who's the person behind the mask. They introduce a number of these kind of side characters and hidden characters, and you don't know which one is behind what's taking place, and have the big reveal. I wouldn't say it's the best reveal. I don't think it's the most surprising twist in light of the journey that you're on and the amount of runtime that you have. But there's at least some sort of intrigue related to the mystery of the Phantasm and the identity of the Phantasm. And then it's also has all the other normal layers of conflict that you want in a Batman story, where there's the organized crime, there's the police force that doesn't know what to do with Batman. So as the Phantasm enters the picture as someone that in the dark would look like Batman and starts killing people, it sets the police after Batman. Likewise, you have the crime syndicates who think Batman snapped, and so they're like setting their sights on Batman and then hiring Joker to go after him. And so you challenge Batman and Bruce Wayne on multiple levels. Bruce Wayne, the man, is challenged and tempted by this woman in his life, both in the flashbacks and in the present. Batman is in the situation of there's a new villain showing up that's killing people, that's causing everyone else to come after him and think he's the person behind all of it. So stay with multiple levels of conflict and tension to it that all kind of come to a head in our final showdown, where Batman and Bruce Wayne are the ones that he's able to overcome some degree of his past trauma, whereas our Phantasm is still locked into all of that and has to keep seeking her revenge. And while we later learn that it's not her ultimate fate. In the movie, it's somewhat implied that she could have potentially died in what she does and the choice that she made her. You kind of know that she doesn't. You obviously know Joker doesn't die here. And then, of course, when you have movies like this, the question always comes to mind, does it warrant its existence? Is there enough here to explain why this wasn't just like a 3-episode arc on the TV show? What does it just feel like episodes of the TV show? And I would say you can certainly see that the budget is a lot bigger here. Of just the smoothness of the animation, some of the brightness of the colors, the scope of the story. It is kind of darker in nature. As we were rewatching it last night, we had the whole family in the room, and our 3-year-old started freaking out a little bit about the Phantasm. You see a bloody Bruce Wayne, and there's a little bit of that in the animated series, but clearly the Fox wasn't crazy about that. And so you really get a bloody, beat up Bruce Wayne at times in this movie. And it is PG, so there's only so much you can do, but they do what you can do, which it certainly feels like they could get away with more. The budget allowed them to have bigger, smoother shots, better animation. And that's where, when it comes to animation, you can do it really cheap. We have stagnant shots with just the one character talking. And when you start having a budget, you can have a lot more motion, animation, background stuff happening. And you see a lot more of that here versus random episode of the show. For me, I think that this is one of the best Batman films we've ever gotten. And outside of the comics, it's one of the more faithful, if not the most faithful adaptation. As much as I love Nolan's films, they're very Nolanized. As much as the Burton films meant a lot to me growing up, they're very Burtonized. And as much as the Zack Snyder films have a bunch of things I love about them, they're also very much Zack Snyder's version of them. And while this adaptation does put its own stamp on the characters, first and foremost, they were trying to tell a faithful Batman story. And I think this one, when it comes to being faithful to the source material, I think by far, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Batman the Animated Series, the Bruce Timm verse, the Dini verse, whatever you want to call it, I think did the best job of faithfully adapting them into film form. And I think it's just a great watch. But we got to talk about the negative, so let's move on to the bad. And I think the biggest problem here is the runtime. And as this movie was originally going to be a direct-to-video film, I suspect that's kind of where this came from, that they had this mandated short runtime of like 75, 80 minutes. And there's only so much you can do with that. And you introduce a bunch of new characters, you have flashbacks, an origin story, you run out of time. And so there's the story itself is pretty straightforward. There's a few parts where it feels like it has to cheat a few moments, like where Andrea figures out what's like Bruce Wayne is Batman and cheats the moment a little bit just so we can progress the plot a little bit. So I think it would have benefited from having 15 more minutes to kind of flesh things out a little bit more, give it a bit more meat on the bone, a little bit more depth to what's going on. But it's a great story for what it is and what they were able to do with the budget they had, the amount of time they had to convert it into a theatrical film. Remember to share your thoughts down below in the comments section and give me that context. Did you watch it back in the day or are you brand new to this one? Also remember, I'm reviewing all the Batman films. You can check out my other reviews right up here. When it comes to this film, I'm certainly biased because I grew up watching Batman the Animated Series. I saw this movie in the theater. At the same time, I'm totally biased towards Batman 1989 too. Grew up watching that movie too. And I think this movie has aged much, much better. Bruce Timm and his crew created a timeless version of Batman that has stood the test of time. It was great when it came out. It's still great today. I love the designs. I love the look. I love the music that they're able to do here. And this is a great Batman story that my biggest issue with it is I wish it was a little bit longer. Overall, it's an A- on the entertainment scale, a 9 out of 10, and this is a must-watch for Batman fans. If you enjoyed this video, I got more reviews right over there that you can check out. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much.